Good afternoon and welcome to another Studio Sessions. David Hughes here again from the studio. We've got another great studio session lined up here. This one's about creative co-working, and I'm joined by a couple of great creative co-working leaders who I'll introduce just in a moment. And before we do, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. And for myself, that's the Jia Jiao Rang, and I believe that's the same for Krista down in Castlemaine. Philippe, hello, and who are the names you're on today?
And I'm joining from the lands of the Jagera, up in Brisbane, Queensland.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Philippe. And thank you to both of you for joining us today. By way of introduction, we have Philippe Ceulen, who is the Head of Programs at Creative Enterprise Australia, as he says, up in Queensland, up in Brisbane. And we have Krista Horbatiuk, the General Manager of the Castlemaine State Festival and Goods Shed Art, joining us just down the road in Castlemaine there. Thank you both so much for joining us. It's going to be an interesting conversation, I think, because of the obvious challenges that we are facing as co-working places during a global pandemic. A little bit of history about co-working, I suppose. It was just International Co-working Day recently, which is kind of where the idea for having a session on co-working came from for me. August the 9th, International Co-working Day, and it marked 15 years since the concept of co-working was first posited by a guy called Brad Newberg, I think his name was, in a blog post. And since then, obviously, co-working has gone from strength to strength. What have I got here? Some stats. There's around 2 million people using around 20,000 co-working spaces around the world now, and nearly 600 of these are in Australia themselves. It begs the question then, so why has it become so popular? I mean, we obviously all know why it's great, but I thought I might throw a question to you guys. Why do you think that co-working has become so popular? Krista, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that people who work alone, I guess, or who have sole sort of trading businesses or are artists, a lot of creatives work on their own a lot, gives them a sense of connectedness and opportunities. I think it presents a lot of opportunities for people who work in this sort of space, opportunities to collaborate. It also offers opportunities for exchange of ideas. The kinds of things that come out of, I think, co-working are probably endless and also surprising, I think, at times. You know, like I think that there's potential for relationships to build in a co-working setting that you might not think are going to happen, potentially like mentorships or working relationships that you wouldn't have seen come out of, you know, your own business otherwise. And I think as well, for people who work on their own and may have certain ways and systems for working, they don't really have the opportunity to exchange that with other people. And so to be able to work in an environment where you can say, oh, like, I'm having trouble with my systems or whatever it is, which makes people more productive. They have opportunities to talk about this with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Krista. What about you, Phil?
Yeah, I think it's quite a complex question, because I think there's many different reasons why people would want to be part of co-working spaces or communities. I think, you started the conversation with a bit of history, and I didn't realize even where the term come from. I think I've been stuck in the debate for too long, if it's one word or two words, and we can talk about that, or hyphen or one word. We can talk about that later. But I guess for me, I've seen over the years, and this is since 2013 that I've been involved in co-working. I've seen probably two waves of co-working. The first one growing really out of from a grassroots place, a deep sense of need from particular communities to be more connected, to be more supported, to live life differently, to start to structure themselves in different ways. As you said, Krista, more people who are working on their own, perhaps running a business, or the definition of what a business is has changed over the years. You have lots of freelancers, you have lots of digital nomads, and so on and so on. And so you see this first wave, which was almost more of a movement, I would say, and a grassroots movement in saying we need to build these spaces so we can come together and live this lifestyle, which is different than what other people are doing. And then I guess over the years, that's sort of infused in the general business landscape where there is more flexibility, there is more freedom. Companies want to be more open and innovative. They see the value of collaboration between people from different firms or different backgrounds or coming from a different place, and say, well, we're going to experiment with hot desking. We're going to allow people to work remotely. We're going to allow for all these things to happen. And so now you see, I guess, a level of maturity in co-working where it's all about this this collaboration, flexibility, access to innovation, better lifestyle for businesses and employees, and then on top of that, all the things that you mentioned, Krista. So I think there's lots of reasons why co-working is really caught on, and in my story you will also have heard that my belief is that co-working has morphed quite a bit over the years from what it was maybe 15 years ago, as you said, David, to what it is now in terms of maturity.
Yes, and I was reading about how it all started, and it was 2 days a week. So you couldn't even go 5 days a week to the place. It was 2 days a week, and it was just card tables that he set up in a room and put some tablecloths on them. So I think it has changed quite a bit since then. Thankfully, we've got much more professional setups now. And it's looking good. And there's some great points that you both touched on there. I mean, the whole thing about large businesses now seeing the value in the workforce has changed, I think, is something that we're going to see, and we can talk about more. The global pandemic has kind of nudged that along a little bit, I think. But that reduction of loneliness or isolation, if you like, of workers and being able to connect with people, I think, is something also that we're going to see come to the fore again as we come through this pandemic. So that we'll touch on that a bit later. What I want to do now, though, is just bring it kind of into talking about creative co-working spaces, because there's lots of different styles of co-working spaces around the world, as we know, and a lot of them have different focuses, whether it might be fintech or it might be all different takes. But what I'm interested in talking about is about creative co-working spaces. So I thought it'd be good to get a little bit of a feel from you guys about your spaces that you guys are involved with and how you specifically support creative industries, or how your space is designed to support creative industries. I'll kick off, if you like, just talking about the studio for a little bit. So one of the things that we do is, or one of the things that I focus on when I'm talking to people, is talking about the whole landscape. So there are lots of different people within Bendigo and organizations who all support creative industries, but they all play a different part in that picture. And so we play a specific part in that picture as well. And so there are certain things that we're not, and there are certain things that we are. And what we don't do is we don't offer gallery space, exhibition space, we don't offer wet space, and other things. But what we do offer, we offer desks for people who need to come in and find a quiet space to be able to work. We offer the opportunity to professionalize the business by offering state-of-the-art workspaces, meeting rooms, boardrooms, video conferencing capabilities, and so on. So if you are working from a kitchen table and setting up your business and you're having client meetings, over the breakfast dishes, then we offer you that opportunity to kind of start to professionalize your business. We've also got a great studio space that's suitable for video and photography and podcasting. So that's fantastic as well. So that's kind of the piece of the pie that we inhabit, I suppose. We are about to start offering business incubation services, professional development, and that kind of thing as well. We've just been working out how to do that in an online setting. We just had to adjust that a little bit. But it's all about professionalization and development of your creative enterprise. So that's kind of the piece of the puzzle that we play. But what about you guys, Krista, the Good Shed? Good Shed Art. So how are you guys structured, and how do you support creative industries?
Well, it's sort of interesting the way that we came about, because the Castlemaine State Festival, obviously our primary function is to put on a festival, which is a biennial festival, runs for 10 days every 2 years, and it's been going for a long time, since 1976. And the board and management at the time, back in 2015, I think it was, had came across this, this old wood shed that we all know it was not utilized at the time, and it had previously been known as a sort of an indoor, I think it was indoor soccer or something, and we used it for a venue for our festival in 2013, and it was in a very derelict state. And at the time, it was being owned. It's owned by Victrac, but what the Maryborough Highland Society wanted to turn it into a big pokies venue, and there was a big sort of action group that was formed in Castlemaine called EPIC, which was enough focus in Castlemaine, which came together about 1,000 people, and they lobbied council to stop the progression of this development. And that actually happened, and it was a fantastic outcome that it didn't go ahead. And off the back of that was I think that was in 2014 or something, that all finished up, and the festival saw an opportunity to take over this venue and create something that would be very beneficial to the creative community of Castlemaine. And Castlemaine, as you probably know, David, I don't know if you do, Philippe, but it's an incredibly creative community, and we have an enormous population of artists here, visual artists, performing artists, writers, digital artists, so, all the whole lot, musicians, and I think the festival saw an opportunity to be able to create a space for this creation of art and supporting artists and creative businesses to be able to thrive throughout every year, not just in that time of the festival. So in the festival, we were able to bring that to community. We were able to bring the 10 days of amazing artistic experiences to the community, and I think this vision was around around doing that on an everyday basis. So I've been working for the festival since 2009, but as general manager since 2016. And so at that time, it was the very beginning of actually trying to get the money together to build this place. And so now that we have it, it's a fantastic, fantastic asset that unfortunately we haven't been able to use in quite the way that we want to later, obviously. But our vision for the space is to be able to offer opportunities for residencies for artists. We have an office, a co-working office that we envisage will have creative businesses working within that in a co-working capacity. We have communal working spaces, we have meeting spaces, shop spaces. We have a large creative development space that can also be performance space. And on the other end, we have the Castlemaine Circus working as a circus school. And so our aim with Good Dead Arts is to be able to bring, as I said before, to create a space for the community to thrive in the area of the arts and to come together on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and be able to work together and find those opportunities for collaboration and ideas exchange and mentorships and I think having the festival be a real central focus of our community for a long time, we're in a position to be able to do that for the community because there's a lot of connections that we have that we can help the community with. Like we can help the community sort of thrive in their areas of practice and connect with each other as well as with us.
Yeah, great. I came and had a look, as you know, at the space, and you've got that beautiful performance space.
Yeah.
So that will be. Has that had any use yet, or has it just not been able to be?
Yeah. Well, what we do for the last two festivals, we've had the building since 2016. For the last two festivals, we've actually turned the building into two very large performance spaces. And that has worked incredibly well. The circus has moved out for the month of March, and we've managed to use that space. Now that we have our development in one end of the building, it sort of lessens the amount of space that we have for two large theaters, but we still had plans to do that in 2021, which is now changed due to COVID. Our plans for the festival are quite different, but still, yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for the theaters to be built.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Oh, are you muted, David? Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second. All right. Well, I might tell sort of my story ish then, because I'm assuming you were going to pass it on to me anyway, and talk about the 1961 and the coterie a little bit more. But first, a few things that you just mentioned, Krista, which has really sparked my interest, is that I definitely see the kind of the similarities between creative communities and entrepreneurial communities, and I guess my experience spans across both, and the overlap between both. I guess both communities and people within those communities have very specific needs in terms of, I guess, peer support, shared infrastructure that can typically be quite expensive, given how some of the businesses are structured, or at least it's in our best advantage as creatives and as entrepreneurs to keep our costs low, as low as possible. And so, co-working are a great way co-working spaces are a great way to access infrastructure you're not investing in yourself. They're a great way to connect with people who have similar views or can challenge your views. So there's that level of, expertise that sits around. There's no set pathways in terms of how you do things necessarily. And it's both true in the entrepreneurial space and in the creative space. So you're learning from each other, and you're learning from people who have a few years more experience than you have, as opposed to taking a formal course necessarily in something to learn how to do things. And obviously you do that as well, maybe in complement, but there is more value, I think, that sits in that peer support. And then there's a level of access to that infrastructure and a level of credibility that can come with that as well. I was recently involved with a group, a business industry association in the VR and AR space here in Brisbane, and we were looking at a space, and we were looking at how a co-working space or a VR creative focused space could leverage particular industry partnerships or have access to equipment and infrastructure that would be really hard for individual companies or members of that community to actually afford themselves as well. Plus on top of that, being a space where meetings could be held with industry or with potential customers, which was really interesting. I heard a bit of an origin story in there as well, and how the whole space came about. I mean, mine is very much that. And so in 2013, I set up the 1961 Coworking and Art Space. This was in Siem Reap, Cambodia. So I'm originally from Belgium, but I moved there in 2009 to lead a business that I had a minority investment in, which was a very traditional business in agriculture, rice production and rice trading nationally and internationally there. And I took the lead on setting up that business locally, and ended up hiring a team of 30 people around us, managing a relatively healthy and decent business. But that had, basically reached a plateau at some point, because there's only so much you can do in terms of growth for these types of businesses once they're established. There was a deeper need at the time for me to be connected to other entrepreneurs. I mean, I wasn't calling myself an entrepreneur or a founder or even a business owner at the time, not at all. But there was definitely the deeper need to connect with people who were on similar trajectories in their lives, professional trajectories. And so I started thinking about creating a space as a home for people like me who were living there, both locals and expatriates at the time. And the other side of the story is that I'm a musician myself, and so I was playing a lot of music, always kind of as a side gig. Haven't done so much in the last few years, but that was an important part to me. And so I got together with business partners on setting up the 1961 co-working space, the co-working and art space, which was a hybrid space for entrepreneurs, so open plan co-working space, offices for rent, but also an art gallery. And an art gallery that would provide a platform for local artists and international artists to come and showcase their work, but also work with some of our resident artists, including one of my co-founders, who's a Filipino guy called Loven, who's a very well-established artist there. And so through that, we had access to a really big network and lots of opportunities to support photo festivals, the Anchor Photo Festival, local artists there to showcase their work, to give these artists access to customers and audiences as well. So Siem Reap, I don't know if you know, but it's one of the main tourism destinations in the whole of Asia, and quite high up there in the world as well. So accessing that potential customer base for local artists was a really big part of what we were doing there. Fast forward a few years, I find myself in Brisbane, where I joined as a program manager, a company called Creative Enterprise Australia, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Queensland University of Technology. And we were established as basically as a business incubator to drive commercialization and innovation in the creative industries, and what we later called creative tech, for the creative industries precinct, which is an investment made by state government and the university, and is a state-of-the-art creative industries precinct at QT. So actually quite an amazing space if you ever get an opportunity to visit. And so we were set up as this business arm, and this is 12 years ago. I wasn't there. I've been with the company for 3 years. But one of the early things that the company did is establishing a business incubator with about 30 offices that were rented out to early stage creative businesses, as well as the establishment of a co-working space, which caters probably about half to students or university affiliates, about half to creative practitioners and professionals outside of the university. And so out of that, and I guess I'll wrap it up here, but we'll dig a bit deeper into how that then evolved over the years later in the conversation. But it became one of the early co-working spaces in Brisbane, a vibrant place for creative entrepreneurs to come work, to be supported by a larger community, to be supported by the infrastructure of a larger precinct as well, and has over the years played a really big and important role in advocacy of entrepreneurship and innovation in the creative industries in Australia. And one of the things where we chat about Krista as well is that for 10 years we ran Creative 3, which is a conference, and Creative 3, I guess, stands for creativity, enterprise, and investment in the creative industries and creative technologies.
Thanks, Phil. And can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can hear you well, loud and clear.
Right. Don't know what happened there. Yeah. Anyway. The 1961 co-working space sounds great. I did do a bit of research on it, and the yoga initiation at sunrise that I read about sounds fantastic. So it's an idea I might steal when we're able to open up again. We might do a yoga session every morning or something. But
you can steal all of my ideas and all of the ideas that I shared in this conversation. I think that's part of the co-working philosophy and values. Is you can have all of it if it serves your community.
What I forgot to mention at the start, which I usually do with these sessions, is for people to ask questions through the Facebook comments. So if you are watching and you do have any questions, please put them in the comments and we shall try to answer them. We have had a couple of comments come through. One question specifically from Tamra, wondering so this is a question for ACMI X. I'll read it out and I'll explain a little bit about this. Wondering if ACMI X support work experience opportunities for senior secondary college students into digital startup. Thanks, Tam. This conversation, we were going to be joined by Amber, who heads up ACMI X. For those who don't know, you probably will. We are affiliated with ACMI. We're actually this project it's a Creative Victoria initiative that's being managed by ACMI. Amber was supposed to join us, but unfortunately couldn't at the last moment. But ACMI X is another co-working space run by ACMI, and I'll ask that question for you, Tam. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that unfortunately, like a lot of co-working spaces, ACMI X aren't doing a great deal at the moment, simply because everybody has to work from home. But it also kind of feeds into the next thing that I really want to talk about, and something that you guys touched on, I think, is how creative co-working spaces often rely on a hybrid model almost. So there's the co-working aspect, but there's usually something else as well. So I know with you, Philippe, there's been, there's the accelerator programs that CE have run, and the awards and the startup fund and all those kind of things. And Krista, obviously, you're affiliated with the Castlemaine State Festival. So that whole hybrid model, I think, is an interesting one. I'm wondering, now that people can't really come into our spaces to work so much, how these hybrid models are going to help us. Now that we've got COVID, it's really challenging for us, obviously. How are your models, I suppose, looking to adapt to kind of cater for that? Are you relying on these other aspects? Are there other ways that you are looking to provide value to your creative community in other ways? From our perspective, we're looking to move a lot of the programs that we were going to deliver in person to online settings, and we're really excited to announce a bit more about that in the coming weeks. What about you guys? How are you dealing with this whole COVID situation? Krista?
Well, it's been it's been a really interesting time for us, because we actually finished construction on the 2nd of April, and we didn't even know if we would complete build before, before everything locked down, but we did. And unfortunately, we haven't even had much of an opportunity to have all of our festival team working in this space together. I'm in here now on my own today, because that's our rule at the moment. But we're adapting in many different ways, and as you said, David, where we do have this hybrid model in several respects, actually, but particularly because we run the festival as well as developing this new creative industries hub. And when we first got possession of the new space, we didn't know how long it was going to last, like everyone, and we started sort of planning towards what we were wanting to do, which was starting to get interest out there, starting to think about how we would market ourselves, start getting interest in resident resident workers, and in residencies, and in venue hire, and everything sort of came to a very quick halt because we felt that we didn't know what was in store, and so we slowed everything down. And I think, David, we had this conversation a couple of months ago, how we were both going, what's going on, and how are we functioning? And so, so we sort of started to slow the pace down. At the time, the festival started becoming a real focus, and in my job, which is very split between the Good Shed and the festival, I sort of had to switch my attention over to starting to think about how we were actually going to put the festival on, but at the same time start thinking about how we're going to still let the community know that this venue is here. And so what we've started what we're doing at the moment, which we're about to get out into the community next week, is, and this was actually based on the conversation I had with you, David, around offering space to the community. So what we're getting out there is we're going to offer some, free space to the community, as well as some, rent reduction, and we're also offering some residencies, so sort of week-long creative development residencies, with some, opportunity to meet with our artistic team and that of another local arts organization, Punctum. And we wanted to do this so that we want to keep communicating with the local creatives, so that, they know we're here, and they know, regardless of whether we are allowed to have anyone in the space yet, that we will as soon as we can. We haven't gone down the route of doing any sort of online kind of delivery, but that's basically, our model is a bit different in that sense. So we're not so much around sort of the business incubation model, where we recently did get some funding, which was fantastic, from Regional Development Victoria, for a digital media program. And so that's something that we're working really hard on at the moment to get this up and running in the next couple of months. And what we don't know yet is if we're going to be able to deliver it face-to-face, or whether we're going to have to turn to an online model. We're very much hoping that we can have people in a room together, but we are planning for both at the moment. And we see that this program, this digital media program, our hope is that it's popular. And I think in the time now of digital, the digital space becoming almost like a new co-working space, that, we're hoping that that this program is really popular, and that we can continue on with having a digital media hub as part of the Shed Arts. And that's one of our key focuses, is trying to, make that happen as a program that we run, in addition to being able to facilitate and provide opportunities for other artists and organizations to run their own programs from the venue. So, we're still very much planning the idea of real people to real people, full interaction, but at the same time knowing full well that this is how we're living right now. And one of the things I keep talking about is how our festival team, we're constantly kind of planning and replanning and planning and replanning what our festival is actually going to look like, and keep saying, are we putting on, or are we planning a hypothetical festival? Are we actually going to be able to put this on, or are we just going to be able to create a book that is actually published, and here you go, this is what kind of festival we were going to put on. So we just think we don't know, but everybody's working very hard to do what we all want to do and what we can do safely.
I was saying to someone recently that it's impossible to plan anything unless your plan is to stay at home. Do not.
That's right. That's right.
That's your plan. It's a pretty safe one, but apart from that, it's quite hard.
Very hard.
We've been, just touching on some of the things that you said there, we've been kind of playing around with how do we create a virtual co-working space. When we talk about some of those things that we talked about at the start of the section, what is great about co-working is that reduction of isolation, the opportunity to kind of connect and collaborate even with other people, maybe identify mentorship opportunities, create that informal network, perhaps even the opportunity to connect with larger businesses. How can we do that in a virtual kind of setting? It's not the ideal, but it's the situation we're in. So that's kind of some of the things that we've been playing around at, and we've got some ideas around that. But Phil, what are your thoughts on it?
And David, I was going to add to. Yeah, sorry, you go ahead.
Well, just how's the coterie looking to adapt?
Yeah, I was going to just comment on what you just said there. Like, obviously, it might be very different if you have an existing member base or community versus you just starting out and actually figuring out how to go virtual, but actually attracting members into there, as opposed to continue to support an existing member base that you can build on. It's a different situation. So for us, interesting moment in time. So I'm actually not thinking about the future of the coterie for the reason that CEA will cease operations at the end of September. So it's one of the, I guess I would say CEA has been one of the casualties of the issues that are currently being faced by universities across the country. So I'm not thinking so much about that. I'm thinking about, how do I reinvent my own life and career in the next few months, which is exciting. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think it's a great opportunity to rethink and to position myself. But I can take a step back and I guess talk to you about sort of the coterie and what it's done over the last few years, because I think it's relevant to the discussion we're having now. Is that when I joined the company, we're very much a small co-working space plus a bunch of additional services that sit around that. And the issue with being focused on a physical space, which I guess this can be, this moment in time can be quite liberating. But the issue with being focused on a physical space is that you're thinking about, all right, I need to fill my seats, and I look at my member churn and I look at how many members I have, and those are really the wrong metrics when you're trying to build a community. You're trying to build something that's much larger than whoever's sitting right there in your space. And what you said, Krista, just before, it's like you have your hands in a play in the entire creative community and how things are happening around and how that's supporting creatives and entrepreneurs in that space, and how you're I guess maximizing the impact you can create being structured as a co-working space or as a space or as a hub or as an innovation hub, however I guess you want to call it. So I think the role of co-working spaces is much larger than filling a room and activating that space. It is that network builder, it is that community builder. It is, as you were saying, David, it's connecting to companies that exist. It is connecting to internship opportunities. We do that. We place students in startups through CA as an entity or as a kind of an on-ramp to the innovation ecosystem or access to the innovation ecosystem. But so back to where I was going is when I joined, there was that sort of narrow-minded definition on we need to serve the people who are in the building, and I guess over the last few years we very much expanded that around who is actually the community around CEA and around our co-working space and around our incubator. And that might not be the 50 people or the 100 people that are sitting in the building. That might be the 1,000 people in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, and abroad that we have a relationship with, that are a meaningful relationship with, that are I guess utilizing some of our support that we've had a touch point with through programmatic activity, be it the incubator or an accelerator program, or perhaps companies that we have invested in, or partners, professional services that come on board as partners with the company. And so think of the community as being both a larger number of people around the space, the Bendigo creative community, the Castlemaine creative community, and then also what are some of the key stakeholders and organizations that play an important role in that space, and that can be a bunch of the organizations that you mentioned, Krista, and how you as a co-working space help make sure that those relationships are sort of facilitated, and you help support, I guess, a better support network overall for a larger community. Meaning also you're actually investing quite a lot into the community, and you're not capturing all of that value back straight to the co-working space. And this is why, David, to your point, and kind of the point of the question was, why are we seeing some hybrid models? Is because co-working space as a kind of pure just co-working space model is actually a really hard business model. So you need to, in order to be able to exist and create the impact you want to create, but also champion the mission that we all want to champion, we need to do much more. We also need to be supported, perhaps by university, perhaps by state or federal governments, or local governments. We may be supported by industry partners or corporate sponsors, but typically it's a difficult business to run on its own. So that's sort of with the Coterie and with CEA. We've completely changed the mindset around who is the community, who is the CEA community. It is a lot of people that are out there that we have supported, that have informal connections with us, that we contact, perhaps some of them only once a year, while others are sitting in the building and we see them every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. And I really like what you're talking about there with when you talk about the wrong metrics, bums on seats are the wrong metrics. It is about community, and all the people that I've spoken to in this kind of field have said that's the number one thing you need to do. Your number one focus is on the community, because it's the community that sustains you, and it's the community that keeps you going. We have touched on this a little bit. We've just got a few minutes left, and I just wanted to talk about what the future holds then for co-working now that we've had a global pandemic. Which way is it going to go? Is it going to go that nobody actually ever wants to leave their home again? People are too scared to come into a space where they're going to be in contact with other people. The fear of catching something. Are people going to say, I've set myself up quite nicely at home here. I've got into a groove here, and why would I go and spend money on a desk or an office somewhere else when I've managed to purchase myself a new desk, I've got a new chair, I've got my computer set up, I'm all good to go. Is it going to go that way? Or do we feel that people are going to be racing out of the traps as soon as they're able to get that physical connection again, and they're just going to be desperate for that? Which way is it going to go? Who's got the crystal ball?
Yeah, I think it's going to go both ways. Actually, I think there's going to be part of the population that are really comfortable and really happy to just stay home. I think it depends on your home situation and how easy it is for you to work at home. I guess, lots of things, what kind of house you have, whether you have kids, whether you like your house, and how much money you're making. And I do think there will be a big part of the population, probably regardless, there's the issue of the vaccine, and I think that will play a part in people's comfortability of getting back out there into co-working spaces and whether or not, people feel safe. But I do think there are people in society that will find ways of feeling safe, and will want to really get back out there and work with other humans again. So I think it's hard to say which way it'll go more heavily, but I think it will go both ways. I also think that in terms of co-working, I said it before, but I do actually think that the digital co-working space is probably a real way of the future in terms of everybody learning new ways of connecting with each other, and it will help those people who are comfortable working in their own homes and would like to connect with other people. That, if there's potentially, ways that they can do that, like this, for example, like what we're doing, and even, more informal ways of doing that will provide, big opportunities for people. So I think it's about the definition of co-working, really. It's about, co-working is it's physical, but it's also virtual.
Yeah, thanks, Krista. And I did know Jane Wilson has put a comment there. All the current processes and initiatives are an opportunity for long-term development to be useful for introverted artists that are normally isolated regardless of lockdown. I have felt more connected in lockdown through being able to attend from home. So again, another interesting perspective that in some ways the pandemic has made some people feel more connected. It's an interesting perspective. Phil, what do you think?
Well, I do agree with that. I think I felt more connected, but in a strange way, I felt more connected globally. So I have a lot of friends who live across Asia, Europe, and I've connected with many more in the last few months than I have in the last few years. That's for sure. There's also something. I don't have a crystal ball, right? But I think there was already a big shift in co-working to start with. Even before the pandemic. You mentioned earlier, there's about 600 spaces across Australia. Even before the pandemic hit, in the last 18 months, about a third of those have closed. So we've lost a third of our co-working spaces, or I guess the term here is co-working spaces and innovation spaces across the country. So there's definitely something happening there. I actually think that, yes, we will see some shifts. I don't know where it's going to go. We might see some revitalization of some of the kind of more grassroots spaces, very local co-working spaces. Like I think increasingly we will go to a very different work-life harmony state where, yes, we might be working more from home, but also we will want to go to office-like environments. But it might be closer to home. It might not be your company office. It might be something that's more local to your neighborhood. I think that's one of the big kind of emerging trends out of this pandemic is things going back to a more local experience environment. There's lots of companies that have made bold statements during this period of time saying, well, we're going to go completely remote. We're actually not going to reopen our offices. So where are all those people going to go? Once we go back to a certain level of normality, and you have to have face-to-face meetings and have access to printers meeting rooms and boardrooms, event spaces, and all these types of things, right? You typically don't have that at home, or at least I don't. I have a spare bedroom. That's great, yeah, so I think we'll see some shifts there, both I guess on the kind of community grassroots level spaces, as well as on the kind of more I guess professional co-working spaces. I think lots of companies might provide their employees globally with access or with memberships to spaces in their own environments. And I guess the last thing is that we'll also see, I guess I think there will be the continued mission for co-working space operators to continue building community and investing in their stakeholder networks and ecosystems, separate from just the physical space. So when you're talking virtual co-working spaces, I'm not really sure how all of that's going to play out, but I think the co-working space operators / community leader and ecosystem builder persona and profession is something that is going to develop as well, and is probably going to have quite a large virtual component to it. I would imagine.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Phil. From my perspective, I think, probably touching on what you both said there, I don't think that this is the end of the story for co-working. I would describe it as a new chapter, because everything has to evolve, and co-working has evolved over the last 15 years, and this is another opportunity to evolve. And like you reading articles about it and seeing what people are saying, the whole fact that you've got large companies now looking to downgrade their head offices in cities, and that there may even be the rise of kind of satellite co-working spaces where you get to work 2 days from home, you get to work a day in a headquarter office, but then to get that community feel, you might go to a co-working space close to you. So you get that sense of community, you get the feeling of connecting with other people, but also you don't have to do the commute. So you get the community, but not the commute. I think
I might steal that line, David.
I think what that will do is it will provide people who are working in co-working spaces with greater opportunity to connect with the larger organizations. And as we know, large organizations play a really important role in supporting startups by being their customers and investing money in trying to, in the ideas and the products that they're selling. A couple of other comments before we wrap up. Thank you so much, guys. I've seen a couple of other comments come through. Hannah Wood thinks that people are ready to make things happen and that co-working spaces have a role in being prepared for this by building community and networks. I agree, Tam. And Vanessa Rawson, once restrictions ease, I'm hoping to establish a co-work space in my town. That would be fantastic, Vanessa.
Vanessa, I'm not sure if you can get in touch with any of us, probably through Facebook, but if there's anything we can do to help, once you're ready to do that, just feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. I would absolutely echo that, Philippe. I have certainly benefited from talking to people like you guys and other co-working spaces in setting up a studio, and it's a very supportive community out there. Philippe, Krista, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you go. We are getting towards the end of it now. It's been great talking to you. It's been fantastic to hear the kind of things that you guys are getting up to. For those people who are watching, thank you very much for your attention and tuning in again today. Thank you for the questions that came through. Next week, we have a session on grant writing from the City of Greater Bendigo, talking about how local creatives can access the grants that are available there, and a little bit of a workshop on that. And that will follow the week after by health and creativity, which was one that we had to postpone. But for now, enjoy your evening, stay safe, and we will connect again soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.